Thanks very much, David. My name is Sharon Ward. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for the Education Law Center, and we are one of the law firms that brought the school funding case with the Public Interest Law Center and the O'Melveny law firm. So I want to reiterate what Melissa said, that the Basic Education Funding Commission report that was adopted yesterday provides a roadmap for our education funding system, and one that works for kids. If it's implemented, it will bring transformational change to Pennsylvania's school funding system. I'm going to start with what it means for school funding for next year if implemented, and then talk a little bit about why it provides almost everything we need for a roadmap for success. The adopted report would provide over $1 billion in funding increases to school districts for next year, $735 million in funding for the adequacy shortfall that I'll talk about in a minute, $200 million that would be run through the fair funding formula, and $136 million in a new tax equity supplement. All school districts are going to receive, if enacted, an increase in this proposal. So the Commonwealth Court's opinion identified adequate funding as the first condition for a constitutionally compliant system. And we've used the term adequate funding, but it means it's very simple. It means identifying the goal that you need to achieve and finding the cost to get there. The court ruling set a clear standard for what's required and a number that needs to be attached to that. And this report is specific and detailed about what needs to be done to move the state on the path towards constitutional compliance. Simply put, the commission found the difference between what students need to succeed and what schools are spending is $5.4 billion. And the state's responsibility for that is $5.1 billion, or 95% of the total. As we have stated many times before, Pennsylvania's state share of funding has been woefully inadequate. We consistently rank among the bottom on the bottom of all states, and this represents a new recognition that the state has the constitutional responsibility to fund our schools. School districts will be asked to, or the funding gap includes a local share. That share is small, only 5%, about $291 million. While the shortfall that the commission report estimates differs from prior estimates, it's using a more conservative estimate of the average spending at successful schools. Most importantly, the adequacy shortfall funding is directed precisely to those low wealth districts with the greatest spending gaps. If these funds get to those school districts, it will be a game changer. At trial and during the commission, we heard from school officials about what they need to support their students. There we go. Reading and math specialists, support for multilingual students, AP classes at low-wealth school districts, not just in wealthy school districts, counselors, librarians, and teachers. This funding will help to ensure that all school districts are able to provide these critical student services. The report also recommends a $955 million tax equity supplement that would support districts with higher than average tax effort. Over the years, many low wealth school districts have raised their taxes well above the average in a desperate attempt to meet their students' needs. This fund is a direct response to Pennsylvania's over-reliance on local taxpayers to fund schools. It will also help to ensure that all of the adequacy funding, shortfall funding will go to students. Altogether, the commission is proposing to increase annual state funding by $6.1 billion in these two funds alone. The report
also includes a recommendation for the state to take on its responsibility to fix Pennsylvania's crumbling public school infrastructure instead of leaving that entirely to local school districts. The PA Schools for a Coalition and the law centers had high hopes for a commission report that would provide a detailed and specific roadmap to an adequately funded system. This plan comes very close to meeting our expectations. It acknowledges the funding shortfall and places responsibility on the state to fix the problem. It creates a specific timetable for implementation. While the 7-year timetable is longer than we hoped, it is a starting point for our discussions, and it includes an acknowledgement of a number of other issues and priorities that the General Assembly can address in the months ahead. Most importantly, this proposal will also provide additional funding to every school district to meet current needs and prevent new gaps from opening. It will fix volatility problems with the current formula, and it'll reset the base funding moving forward. So yesterday, Commission Chairman Mike Sturla, Co-Chairman Mike Sturla, stated that this report is the end of the beginning, and it is. It's only a recommendation. But if you think about it another way, for students and parents and teachers and administrators and taxpayers and underfunded school districts, it can be the beginning of the end of overcrowded classrooms, of schools without libraries, counselors, or nurses, of schools without algebra or AP classes, of elementary school buildings with one toilet for 90 kids. We hope that the General Assembly members can come together in support of this plan and fix the problem once and for all. And now I'll turn it over to Mark Steer.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm Mark Steer. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Policy Center. The adoption of the Basic Education Funding Commission report yesterday is a major step forward, as other speakers have mentioned, in meeting our constitutional and moral responsibility to fully and fairly fund education. The first step in this process was a court decision by a Republican judge holding that our current system of funding education was not constitutional. Yesterday, the state took a second step. We are grateful that a majority of the commission, including the governor and the members of the General Assembly, have now provided a detailed and specific plan as to how we should meet the constitutional and moral requirement of adequately and equitably funding our schools. A plan we believe is basically fair. And while not every member of the commission supported this proposal, the minority members did accept the court ruling, and I quote, that the evidence presented in the case showed that resources, whether monetary or otherwise, were not adequate to meet the needs of the students. The minority report also identified best practices for education that we support, but that cannot be put in place without new funding. And the minority report rightly said that it's up to the General Assembly to meet those needs. So the next step is for the governor to present and the General Assembly to accept a budget proposal that will implement the first year of this bold program. We believe that a majority of senators and House members will eventually do that, because the families as well as the businesses in their own districts recognize that adequately and equitably funding education is critical, both to providing opportunity for their kids and a strong economy for their communities. We're grateful that Governor Shapiro and members of the General Assembly are leading the way to a better future for our kids and our Commonwealth. As advocates for education, we're going to be spending the next months working with them to lift up the voices of Pennsylvania's kids, of Pennsylvania's families, and Pennsylvania's businesses in support of implementing the plan that was proposed yesterday. We believe that those voices will ultimately carry the day, and that this year we will put in place a path to full and fair funding of K-12 education in Pennsylvania. We encourage everyone listening today to join us in this very important and critical effort.